The fishing vessel Aurora Tide pushed steadily through the early morning waters, its engines humming with the familiar rhythm that Captain Rowan Hale had trusted for years. The ocean was calm that morning, almost too calm, stretching endlessly in every direction under a pale sky. Rowan stood at the helm with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent most of his life at sea. Around him, the small crew moved through their routines as the shoreline slowly faded into the distant horizon. Isla Mercer worked below deck checking the engine systems, while Mara Collins spread navigation charts across the cabin table to confirm their route. Thomas Vega secured equipment along the deck, tightening ropes and checking the nets with careful precision. Meanwhile, Daniel Brooks filmed the open water with excitement, hoping to capture rare marine life for his research project. For the first few hours, everything felt ordinary. The boat followed its course, cutting through gentle waves that shimmered in the sunlight. Rowan picked up the radio microphone to send their routine position update back to the harbor. But instead of the usual response, the speaker answered with a harsh burst of static. At first, he assumed it was temporary interference. The sea often played tricks with radio signals. He tried again, adjusting the frequency carefully. Once again, only static responded. Mara looked up from the charts, noticing the tension in Rowan's expression. Soon Isla joined them from the engine room, examining the radio equipment and the communication panel. Nothing appeared broken, yet every attempt to reach land failed one by one. The crew tested the satellite link and navigation systems, only to find the signals flickering and fading unpredictably. By the time the sun began sinking toward the horizon, the reality slowly settled over them. The Aurora Tide had drifted far from the coast, and suddenly, they had no reliable way to contact land. As night approached, the ocean changed. The golden light of sunset faded into deep blue shadows, and the water became a dark mirror reflecting the rising moon. Without communication with the harbor, the crew gathered inside the dim cabin, trying to understand what had happened. Rowan remained calm on the surface, but years of experience told him that isolation at sea could quickly become dangerous. Mara checked the navigation display again, only to find the GPS coordinates flickering between impossible locations. The instruments were clearly malfunctioning, leaving them with only the old magnetic compass and paper charts to guide them. Isla spent hours opening the communication panels, examining wires and circuits under the soft glow of a portable lamp. She replaced connectors and checked every cable she could reach, but the radio continued to respond with nothing but hollow static. Thomas stood quietly on deck, staring across the dark water in search of distant ship lights. Yet the horizon remained empty in every direction. Daniel continued recording, though his excitement had faded into unease. The silence surrounding the boat felt unnatural, as if the vast ocean itself had gone still. No other ships passed nearby, and even the usual distant sounds of engines or seabirds seemed absent. As the Aurora Tide drifted deeper into the night, the crew realized they were truly alone on a quiet, endless sea. Morning arrived slowly, bringing gray clouds and a restless ocean. Without working navigation systems, Rowan had no precise way to determine their exact location. Mara attempted to estimate their position using the compass and the rising sun, calculating their likely drift based on wind direction and current patterns. It was an old technique sailors had used long before modern electronics existed, but it left far too much uncertainty. Every mile they traveled could be leading them closer to safety or further away from any shipping route. Daniel climbed onto the observation deck with binoculars, scanning the horizon carefully. From that height he could see farther across the water, searching for any sign of another vessel. For a brief moment, he thought he spotted something far in the distance, a small dark shape rising and falling with the waves. Hope surged through the crew as they gathered around him. But after several minutes of watching, the shape disappeared behind the swells, leaving them unsure whether it had ever been there at all. Thomas leaned against the railing, his eyes fixed on the shifting sea as if trying to read its patterns. Meanwhile, the Aurora Tide continued drifting slowly across the water, carried by currents none of them could see beneath the surface. Determined to restore communication, Isla continued working through the boat's electronics. By midday the cabin floor was covered with tools, spare parts, and opened equipment panels. She carefully removed the signal receiver and examined the delicate circuitry inside. What she found puzzled her. Several components had been damaged by what appeared to be a sudden surge of interference, far stronger than ordinary radio noise. It was as if a powerful burst of invisible energy had swept through the receiver, overwhelming the delicate systems all at once. Rowan listened closely as Isla explained her findings. Even if they managed to repair the receiver, the same mysterious interference might still exist in the surrounding waters. That meant any new signal they transmitted could be blocked before reaching land. Mara stood near the cabin window, scanning the horizon once more through binoculars. The ocean remained empty. No ships, no aircraft, no distant lights. The vast water stretched endlessly in every direction, reminding them how small and isolated their vessel truly was. Still, Rowan refused to lose hope. As long as the engines continued running and the boat remained seaworthy, there was always a chance they might cross paths with another ship. That evening, the ocean began behaving strangely. Thomas noticed it first while leaning over the railing at the stern. The water below the boat wasn't moving the way it normally did. Instead of gentle waves rolling beneath the hull, a steady current seemed to be pulling the vessel slowly in a single direction. Rowan shut down the engines for a moment to test the drift. Within minutes, the boat had shifted noticeably across the water without any wind pushing it. Mara studied the charts again, confused by what she was seeing. According to every map they carried, no major current should have existed in that part of the ocean. Yet the Aurora Tide continued drifting steadily as if caught in a hidden river beneath the surface. Daniel filmed the glowing reflection of moonlight on the swirling water, capturing the strange movement surrounding the hull. The current carried them quietly through the night, guiding the drifting vessel toward an unknown destination. None of them knew where the water was taking them, but it was clear that something beneath the surface was moving the boat forward. Just before dawn, Daniel suddenly shouted from the observation deck. Everyone rushed outside. Far across the horizon, a small point of light flickered against the darkness. At first it was barely visible, blending with the distant stars. But as the sky slowly brightened, the light became clearer. It wasn't a star. It was something much closer, something standing above the ocean. Rowan immediately restarted the engines and adjusted their course toward the distant glow. The crew watched the light carefully as the boat moved across the water. Slowly, the shape behind the light began to appear, a tall metal structure rising above the waves. As they approached, it became clear that it was an offshore research platform anchored far from land. Relief spread through the crew like a sudden wave of warmth. After days of drifting alone, they had finally found another human presence in the vast ocean. As the Aurora Tide approached the research platform, Isla quickly assembled a makeshift transmitter using spare components from the damaged communication system. It wasn't perfect, but it might send a signal strong enough to reach the platform nearby. Rowan held the microphone carefully while Mara adjusted the frequency. For several long seconds, only static filled the speaker. Then, suddenly, a clear voice broke through the noise. The message came from the research station, confirming they had received the signal. For the first time in days, the crew heard another human voice across the radio. The tension that had weighed on them since losing contact with land finally began to lift. The drifting vessel that had once seemed lost in endless water now had help within reach. As the boat moved closer to the towering platform, the crew of the Aurora Tide realized they had survived something few sailors ever experienced, being truly alone on the open ocean with no way to call home.